Good morning. Today is Monday, February 3rd, 2025. This came up for me yesterday in a situation that I was able to help somebody with. It's an area of practical Jewish law. People should know about this, though I think many do not know about it. It's a subject that many people might be reluctant to study, but it's an area of Torah and we need to know it. And it's an area of Jewish law where technology has changed the way Halacha applies, the Jewish law applies. If, God forbid, an immediate family member passes away, so many of us are familiar with Shiva, the 7-day mourning period. But before that, a person who will sit Shiva, before that starts, they are in a period called Onen. Now, normally, a person is in this category called Onen from the moment of death of their relative, God forbid, until the burial is completed. And that's when Shiva begins. An Onen should not eat meat or drink wine. Men should not shave. A person should not attend any joyous event. And a person is exempt from and therefore restricted from any positive mitzvah. So that means during this time, from the moment of death until the funeral is over, there are no prayers, no davening, no minyan. You don't make a bracha before or after eating. You just eat. Men do not wear tefillin. If it falls on a Saturday night, you don't make Havdalah because Havdalah is after Shabbos is already over. No positive mitzvahs. And there are several reasons for this status. The main idea is to be freed from all positive religious obligations in order to devote oneself, to devote one's time and energy to planning the funeral and to planning for the Shiva and whatever needs to be done to prepare for that, and to wind down any work so that work does not have to take place during Shiva. And this time would be used to prepare a hesped, to prepare a eulogy, if it's applicable, and to let people know there's a lot to do. Now, in a simple case, from the moment you hear of the death until the grave is filled, that is the period of Onen, and Shiva starts from the moment the grave is filled. I remember when my father passed away, I happened to get a phone call in the middle of davening. I was in shul Sunday morning, and I got a phone call in the middle of davening. And I learned that my father had passed away. And so I took off my tefillin, and I took what I needed because I knew I had to leave town to go to New York. So I took off my tefillin, I stopped davening in the middle, right where I was, and because immediately I was an Onen, and all those laws applied. The laws of an Onen do not apply on Shabbos or Yom Tov, since all of this planning that I've been discussing is not permitted to do on Shabbos and should not take place on Shabbos. So therefore, there's no reason to be excluded from doing positive mitzvos because I'm not supposed to be involved in anything having to do with planning for the funeral. So therefore, if there is a Shabbos or a Yom Tov between the death and the funeral, it's a regular Shabbos. It's a regular Yom Tov. All the regular halachas apply until after Shabbos, and then the person reverts to the Onen status until the funeral. Now, until recently, there was a very, very complicated question, And there are many opinions on this and many different scenarios. And what I'm going to share with you is oversimplified a bit. But what if the burial will be in another city and you are not traveling to the burial? So whatever involvement you have in planning for the funeral is going to end when you take leave of the person that passed away, when the body leaves the city, so you're no more involved. Now, there are different scenarios to this with slight differences in the details that could have different answers, but I'm just trying to simplify for now. The basic approach would be that a person starts Shiva when they take leave of the body, when they are no longer involved in anything having to do with the burial. So in that scenario, up until recently, once the body leaves the city where I am and I'm not going, so then that's when I start Shiva. And that could mean that different family members would start Shiva on different days. Let's say, for example, the person is going to be buried in Israel. So it takes quite an amount of time to get there. It could be a day or even more to get to the burial in Israel. But the relatives who stayed here and they're not traveling, they would start Shiva as soon as the body leaves here. And the relatives who are going to the funeral would only start Shiva when the burial is finished. Again, there are some details that could change this, but I'm just giving a simple example. So different family members could start and finish Shiva on different days, which is okay, and that's normal in this situation. What if a person lives in a city different from where the person passed away, and the person is not going to the burial, so they have no involvement whatsoever? They live in a different city, they're not involved in the planning, they're not going to the funeral, so they have no role in planning the funeral at all. In that case, again, with allowances for different scenarios and different possibilities, but the normal simple case is they would start Shiva right away. They would just skip over the period of Onen. They would start their Shiva right away. Again, I just want to repeat that what I'm sharing with you now is a bit simplified. There are different opinions. It depends on which mourner is going and not going, which mourner you are. And there's more than one opinion about this, but this is the basic idea. But it's actually very, very complicated. And people who would ask a question of their rabbi under these circumstances could very well happen that two different family members would get two different answers from two different rabbis. But this is the basic idea. In any event, all of this, in my opinion, is largely in the past because the situation has evolved with technology. Due to cell phones, Wi-Fi even on airplanes, Zoom, FaceTime. Today, virtually anyone can be included in the planning wherever they are. So just because I'm in another city, but it happens, from my point of view as the rabbi, it happens all the time that when I meet the family, sometimes I meet with them on Zoom, or sometimes I meet with the family in person, and there's a relative from out of town that is on Zoom at the meeting. So even if they're distant, they can be part of the planning. And even if they're not going to the burial, they can watch the burial remotely. They can still be involved in letting others know through email, through posting. And a person who is not in the same city, who is not coming to the burial, can also even write and even deliver a eulogy remotely. Happens all the time. So practically speaking, in most cases, everyone who will sit Shiva is an Onen until the burial is completed. Now, it is still possible for it to be on different days according to the Jewish calendar, because let's say the burial is in Israel at night, but the people, let's say in North America, who are watching the burial, for them it's still daytime. So they're starting Shiva on different days and will end Shiva on different days, which again is okay. But it is the moment of the finishing of the burial that starts Shiva for everyone wherever they are. And again, I just want to point out, it's an example where the halacha does not change. Jewish law here has not changed, but rather the technology has developed so that the way that the halacha is applied will change and lead to a different outcome. Of course, we hope never to need to know and use this area of Jewish law, but when we do need it, we should be prepared. And all of these laws are related to the mitzvah of kavod hames, of showing honor to the deceased, because the idea is when someone close to me passes away, my life is put on hold. Everything in my world stops. Even my religious obligations stop in order to attend to the proper burial and mourning of this person. The way we show honor is to say, no, it's not life as usual. No, life interrupted, life set aside. Even God's requirements, positive mitzvahs, are set aside in lieu of showing honor to the deceased by involving ourselves in preparing for the funeral and preparing for the Shiva and preparing for the mourning. May we never need this, but if we do, we should be able to do it correctly in order to show the proper honor and respect to our loved one who has passed away. My friends, I wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.